All right, X-Wing miniature enthusiasts, tactically we are looking at big ships on the table. How do we utilize these awesome pieces, these awesome models? Now I have to say, flash a virtual disclaimer here, I am not hating on big ships. Most of the time in my lists, I take them, Millennium Falcon, Slave One, things like that. They're really theme, narrative, and awesome to play. But they have some serious limitations, primarily based on mass, model mass. X-Wing Miniatures is ultimately about model mass. You need to bring more ships because you can control maneuverability, you can control tabletop positioning, and you can control the dice flow, right, of your ships. And second, points. With the big ships, you get into this question of already the buy-in is a lot of points. Yeah, you can go cheap outer rim smuggler type thing, but are you throwing points away? So you want to do the buy-in, then you want to do the upgrades. That's occupying a lot of squadron points on there. So in a war game and in X-Wing Miniatures, when you're confronted with something like this, you have challenges, you have limitations of a model. You have two options. One, jack it up to the point where those limitations are removed, throwing more points at it, throwing more support stuff. That's one way to do it, but you might not always be able to do that based on the ship or based on what you've picked to play. And the second is those limitations, those weaknesses. What else can you put down tactically or ship-wise that is going to keep your opponent busy so they can't exploit it? So if I have a really, really, really slow big ship on there and I'm worried that my opponent is going to be able to exploit that in the game, then what are my tactics or what are the other elements of ships in my list that are going to fly around, zoom around to keep my opponent so busy that they will never be able to shoot at the big ship on there? Those are your two kind of tactica options of how you're going to do it. So the first thing with big ships, they put out a decent amount of fire dice, but they can only engage 1-to-1. And up on my blog podcast archives, you can find there about a little bit below mid of the page, my archives for X-Wing Miniatures. And we talk about dice flow tactics. This idea that, so imagine, and I'm going to simplify it here really quick on it because the other podcast goes into greater detail. If I have one ship that can put out 8 dice and I have 2 ships that can put out 3 dice to attack each turn, and let's say I always say it because I got re-rolls and I'm all this type of stuff, just for the tactical discussion, long term, game turn after turn after turn after turn, what is the better build, the 8 or the 2 and 3, the 2 3s? The 2 3s, because what's going to happen is when I hit you with 8 dice, because some are going to miss, not all are going to hit, when I do the damage, imagine you shoot 8 dice at a ship that has 1 or 2 hull left. You've stripped down my shields, I've got 1 or 2 hull on there. You destroy the ship, but then the 3 or 4 other dice that cause damage, where do they go? They don't go anywhere. You can't transfer them over to the next ship on there. But if you have 2 ships that do 3 and 3, when I get a ship down to 1 or 2 hull, if I shoot 3 dice into it and I destroy that ship, there isn't going to be an overflow now because I only had 3 dice. It's easier to control. The second ship with 3 dice, I can leverage at another ship on there. So long term, being able to control the dice flow and having your dice spread out over multiple ships is better. So the first thing with a big ship is, well, you can only, for the most part, shoot those dice at 1. The dice output will be higher, but it's still 1. So what you need to invest is, first of all, pilot skill. I need to be shooting first. I want to be shooting first on there. Because immediately, since I can't control the dice, and we'll talk about the footprint in a second, I need to make sure every turn that I'm up, I have the potential to destroy you or destroy one ship before you shoot at me. Pilot skill is very important. So now our really, really cheap, stripped down, kind of core smuggler type ship, we got to upgrade it on there. Second is the ability to engage in a wide radius. Now, fortunately, a lot of these ships do have a turret. Turret or multiple weapon systems are extremely important on there. If I have 1 or 2 big ships or 1 big ship and 2 escorts, we're going to talk about escorts in a second, and you're going up against 8 TIE fighters, I'll be able to shoot you on the way in. TIE fighters blow past, then they're going to be able to get around quicker. There's going to be more ships in in the line of sight to shoot my big ship, then the big ship can shoot back, if that makes sense. So I need to make sure that with a big ship, no matter where I am on the table, because also they move a little bit slower for the most part, I have some sort of turret, I have some sort of secondary firing arc, I have some sort of secondary system on there, whatever it's going to be, that every turn I need to be able to shoot first, pilot skill, and I need to be able to shoot anything on the table that I can. That is going to at least kind of keep it up on there. Now, the second thing, or the third thing, of course, and this actually should have been the first thing because this is key no matter what build you're going to utilize, rerolls. You need something to change misses to rerolls. You need to be able to change eyeballs to hits. You need to be able to change hits to crits. You need some sort of dice mechanical control system in there. I would say that is fundamental to X-Wing, and we've talked about that in the Dice Flow video. But when you're playing lists that have headhunter lists or tie spam or ships that are more generic, you can get away with it. You cannot take something like that because by sheer volume of dice that you're outputting, it's going to kind of smooth over the course of it on there. But with a big ship, absolutely. Now let's talk about escorts on here. Something that is going to move with that big ship that has maneuverability that can either block other ships, because if you can't destroy it, you want to be able to block it, or that can deliver a focused strike on there. Often what we'll see is, say, something like a Y-Wing if I'm playing Rebels, because first of all, I get turrets on there, which is good because they'll just kind of accompany the slowness of the big ship, and I have those shots on there. Missiles, torpedoes, things that might be one strike, but they can deliver a tremendously focused volume of dice. And what you're looking to leverage with those escort ships is not take out the big stuff. You're looking to take, or the powerful stuff that your opponent has, you're looking to take out the weakest in their list. Playing a big ship, you have to get that dice pool down. You have to. So if I'm playing, let's see, an Imperial list that I love to run, Vader, TIE fighters, and then TIE bombers, maybe like one or two working on the flank on there. So kind of pushing those two little gunboat type things. Can't wait till we get the real gunboat in a couple of months. And, Vader, so I can just make certain cracks and movie lines and stuff throughout the thing. And the TIE fighters. So your escorts, they're not going to try and punk Vader. They're not going to try and smack down the hull on the TIE bombers. Even though the TIE bombers put out a lot of damage, you need to get the volume of dice down. So those escort ships, those Y-Wings, those missile ships, those torpedo ships, they're going to fire with the elevated weapons that you're bringing, the elevated upgrades that you're bringing against my TIE fighters. You're going to drop the volume of dice down because that's less dice going at your big ship on there. Building that in, taking that in, looking at what you have in your collection, those are the questions. I feel like that's the starting point. So are there things in your collection, cards and upgrades, that you can minimize the deficiencies of a big ship? Or if you can't, what is your plan for keeping me busy that as much as I want to shoot at your big ship, your escorts or other things, forcing me to deal with those first?